interview series on the Nico Penguin YouTube channel, Twitch channel, LinkedIn, and the Facebook page. For Productive Gamers by a Gamer with your host, Nico Penguin. And today we are joined by a Portuguese software developer, programmer, mentor, lifelong gamer, and a podcast host as well. Please give a warm welcome to Tiago, aka Dosaki. Thank you.
Hello everybody.
Well, thank you for giving us an opportunity to have a conversation. We were already getting a little bit started, so I didn't want to, leave out anybody that's going to have any of those desires to hear you speak. So thank you once again. And where are you calling in from? Because even though you're Portuguese, I don't think you said that you are in Portugal, correct?
No, I live in the UK, north of England, like in the middle of the green of the countryside. So I walk for like 15 minutes, and I'm surrounded by sheep. It's a lovely area.
Oh, that's great. Well, without further ado, I want to get into the good stuff because you was already talking about some good stuff. So first of all, what is your favorite gaming system?
I'm a PC gamer through and through.
Woo
Ever since I was a little boy, like my dad, he was also very much into technology. We always have computers in our house, so I started very much in the computing world. I owned the console, I owned the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation 2, but I didn't play a lot on them. But like PC gamer all the way.
All right. So if you're a PC gamer, you gotta let me know what's your favorite game of all time on the PC.
Ooh, ooh, that's gonna be hard. It depends, I would say.
It's
I'm
like by
very
age
much.
group or how so?
It depends on the kind. So I'm very much into strategy games,
Ooh.
and so StarCraft, Age of Empires,
Ooh,
very much
ooh,
into that.
I played Age of Empires. Okay.
And I'm also now recently I've got into the Paradox style grand strategy games, like
Mm.
Stellaris, Crusader Kings. It's like a completely different way of thinking,
Yes,
and
yes, it's so
my
complicated, fam.
yeah, it's complicated. Like I've been getting into Crusader Kings 3 a lot, like getting all the achievements and whatnot. And my wife is like, she comes in, oh, are you playing that soap opera game again?
It's so
Because
hard. It's so hard. How do you do it? Because I tried, and I'm like, I'm always dying.
it's I don't know. It I think there's a set of a mindset in playing Paradox games where it's okay if you lose, like
Mm.
if you like lose your county or your empire or whatever, and you're now just a little bit of a baron or something.
Yes,
It's okay.
yes.
It's part of the
Okay.
story.
Hmm. That's interesting. And so those are the two different game types, but which one reigns supreme in your heart?
I'm gonna. This is a bit embarrassing, I would say. Uh, there was a period in my teenage life where I played a lot of World of Warcraft, and
Ooh.
that game holds a special place in my heart. I sometimes go in, play for a month or something, get bored of it, and then. But I used to play a lot of World of Warcraft, and back in the vanilla and Burning Crusade, led a guild as well. Um, so that one holds a special place in my heart. And then other than that, I'm also a bit into roguelikes.
Hmm. Okay, so you like a nice majority of different genres.
Hmm.
But you said that World of Warcraft is your number one.
It's hard to say.
It's
How
a
do you
hard
consider
balance.
it is so how do you have a favorite game, right? Because it depends on your mood, right?
Hmm.
And but that one holds a place in my heart just because of the community that I had at the time. I think it's a
Hmm.
bit of a nostalgia thing. Um, but I don't know if I can call it like my favorite game of all time, just because I I get into it and then I'm quickly bored of it,
Yeah,
of how it
yeah.
is at the moment, if you get what I mean.
Oh, okay. Let's twist it. What is the game that you've put the most hours in?
Okay, okay. Okay, so the most hours that I've put into a game, I would say, I think there's three games that are tied.
Ooh.
World of Warcraft, yes.
Hmm.
Second one is Team Fortress 2. I played so much of that, like back in when it came out,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
much of that. And the third one is going to be Stellaris. I sunk so many hours into that game, even made some mods for it. I was like proper into that one.
Oh, that's interesting. And that brings me to my next question is when you've played games, have you ever realized that or the opportunity that you're able to translate your gaming experience to the real world, as in something that you've done in the game, either some experience, a quest, or a community, some interaction, something in the game that enabled you to use that same skill set or something similar in the real world?
Yeah, actually, I have two things. One is a story that's a little bit long, so I'll tell that later. But the first thing is I started out as a software developer, and now more. I always want to be technical and to stay in practice and to build things because that's what I love to do.
Hmm.
But I've lately been more in like leadership positions. And I mentioned before that I had a guild in World of Warcraft and a few other MMORPGs as well. And
Oh, we got a guild leader.
yeah, and I always thought that it takes a certain amount of skill to organize a bunch of people. That
Mm,
and it's especially difficult because it's people's spare time. It's their enjoyment time, and it's even harder to organize a kind of volunteer based group, right?
hmm.
So it takes a special kind of skill to organize a bunch of people, make sure that everything's running smoothly, coming up with new ideas, new events to run, etc., etc. And I always felt that those skills that I developed as a teenager running guilds translated a lot into my current profession and helped me reach out to people, ask them how they're doing, how are things coming along, is there any problem, even conflict resolution, because when you have a
Mm,
bunch of people together, naturally not all of them are going to get along, and
right.
as part of being a lead, you have to sometimes have to deal with the conflicts between people. um, the other story is when I was 13, 14 maybe. I I started making mods for a game that I played at the time, and the only I wasn't very good at programming back
Hmm.
then, and but I found that I could do 3D art no problem. So I used Blender 3D a lot,
Hmm.
and I created some 3D models as for mods for that game, and then I was approached by a friend that he said, "Oh, you can do 3D models pretty well. Do you want to join me? And we're trying to make an open source game. Do you want to join me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I
Oh,
started
wow.
that. So I was 14 doing that, and that actually got me in some strange way into what I'm doing today, because I started with 3D modeling,
Hmm.
and the program that I used, Blender, had a way to script some stuff. And I'm a very lazy guy. If I can automate things away, I will do it.
Right.
So some stuff that I had to model, I worked out that I could make some scripts to generate some stuff automatically for me.
Hmm.
So I started learning Python to get into that, and slowly, I realized I actually enjoy programming.
Hmm.
So I my degree is in computer science, and back then I thought I'm gonna do this for to make games. That's gonna be my life goal. And then I worked out that that's not quite the case. Not that I wouldn't like to make games, but I found that I get myself distracted making
Mm,
tools rather than making the game. So I'm trying to make a game, and then I realize there's a problem here, and I
mhm,
can solve it if I do this and this and this. So I
mhm.
get distracted, and now I'm making a tool to generate some stuff for the game, and I completely forget about the game.
Oh my gosh. No, that's actually pretty cool, especially like the people interaction skills. Like, because I remember playing MMORPGs and I never really paid attention too much to the intricacies of being a guild leader because I was part of the guild. I never ran guild, but to think about like, wow, conflict resolution in real life, that is such an important skill. When two people either don't agree, they're holding up a project, and you as the lead, you have to figure out how do you resolve that without them either hating each other or ending up hating you for taking one side. Like, oh, why did you take their side? You know, when they're in the wrong. It's like, I didn't do anything. It's like you're always favoriting them. Like, how do you resolve those kind of issues? And you learned that from gaming?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I mean, obviously, got further expanded into the real world, but the
Yeah, yeah.
basics were there, and things like maybe people don't can't picture how can you have conflicts in a game, right? But things like conflict over loot sometimes, or things
Yeah.
like we've wiped in this fight with this boss, and then people starting to play the blame game. And I always like to run my guilds and my teams nowadays completely blameless. We don't care about who's at fault. We want to know
Mm,
what the problem is so that we can
mm,
take steps to address that problem and figure out a solution. So that's one part of it. But we had some curious bits in that had to do more with the personal aspect.
mhm,
uh, Naturally, when you spend like months together, people develop some relationships between them, and then
mhm,
sometimes they get upset with each other, and now they
mhm.
don't want to raid together, and then you have to mediate that kind of problem.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's also another part of the issue. And I think one of the bits that really helps me as well is in the professional life you have to have a good performance, right?
Mhm,
You have to make sure that the skills that you've got match with the job role that you have. And it's the same in the game. If you're a healer, then you're meant to be healing people, and if
mm.
you're dealing damage, then you need to be a good damage dealer, and you need to make sure that you don't take too much damage to overwhelm
Right,
the
right.
healers, etc., etc. So there's also some kind of conversations that you need to have as a 17 and 16-year-old with other 17 and 16-year-olds at the time, about, look, we need to address your performance in what we're doing at the moment, because you're bringing the team down, or what are you going to do to improve this, or etc., etc. And it's like I said earlier, it's very hard to talk to people when they're volunteering their time to do this
Mm,
sort of thing. So that
mhm.
adds an I think that's harder than dealing with this sort of problems in the real world, actually.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, wow, like you put it in such a way because now it reminds me of like rating and people disputing, like, hey, I tanked 90% of damage. I should get first dibs. Or it's like, hey, I dealt 90% of damage. Hey, I healed 90% of damage. It's like, how do you Oh man, that just brings me back. But then when you translate that to in real life, like if you have a real project that the team is going for, and you have almost the same conversation with, somebody's either supposed to be doing this kind of coding, somebody's supposed to do this kind of scripting, and they're not getting along, somebody's dragging the team behind, or because one person isn't doing their part, everybody's falling behind, and then you have to essentially now mediate as the lead in order to make sure that you're progressing towards completing that project, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And there's another parallel. For example, if DPS classes, they only think I need to deal the most amount of damage, and they don't get out of the fire, for example. And and then there's also the aspect of it's not my job to do that. And in real life, I'm thinking, for example, let's say you've got a backend developer that is creating some sort of software, and then they think, oh, I don't care about deployment. That's not my job. And
Mm,
you have to coach them through, and like, no, it is your job too. You're responsible for the end-to-end delivery of everything.
mhm,
So you you need to think about that too. Even if you're not doing it yourself, you might have to think about it, and make sure that people at the deployment side, they know how they can deploy this, make it life easier for them as well, etc., etc. So there's that duality in both, the real life and also in games.
well, thank you so much for that. I do want to give you an opportunity to give yourself a shout out for people to follow you either on Twitter, on your website, wherever they can follow you, so that way they have that kudos for you.
Yeah, yeah. You can find me anywhere on the internet by the handle Dosaki, Dosaki. And I think you put in some links in the description as well for my website and my podcast as well. people can click on them and find out a little bit more about me.
Perfect. Just want to give you that opportunity. Don't want to just leave it towards the end. And while we continue, I did have another quick question about a favorite of yours, because I've heard that programming is its own individual language. So, which is your preferred language of the program or programming language?
I have the same problem with programming
Oh
languages
no!
as I do with games. So I am what we usually call a polyglot. So I'm the kind of guy that I pick any language and I do whatever. But
Nice.
currently, I do a lot of work using Go, Python, JavaScript, and there's a language that looks like Java, but it's called Groovy, and I like the name of it. And I don't know if that's why I like the language, but it's really really nice. I got into Rust recently, but I haven't found an excuse to use it at work yet.
Hmm. Oh, so they're all tied? Okay, so let's see here. Which program which program have you spent the most hours using,
Hmm.
whether at work or for yourself?
I must say. So, which programming language have I spent the most time in?
Hmm.
I must say that might be that could be a tie between Groovy and JavaScript.
Oh wow. Wow, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Which one do you think is the easiest for like a early beginner to just pick up and use as if it's nothing, or way lesser than something more complicated?
Hmm. Python is probably the easiest one for beginners because when you look at it, it almost looks like English. Um, However, JavaScript is very popular because it's just everywhere, and everyone can start with JavaScript by like in your browser. If you press F12
Hmm.
and go to console, you got a JavaScript console. You can start doing something. I think that's why it's very very popular, and there's
Hmm.
loads and loads of tutorials online for JavaScript related content.
And so when I've heard before that a lot of programmers they just copy and paste lines of code. Is that true?
Yes, I'm good. So if you ever hear any programmer saying, "Oh, programming is super hard," whatever, whatever, um, tiny bit of it is true,
Hmm.
but the only bit that is true is understanding what you have to do. Once you understand that bit, everything else is really easy. Like once you get into the mindset, and you're right, all we do is Google something, go to Stack Overflow, copy and paste it all, and just change the name of the variables so that they match with the rest of your program. Off it goes, almost like that. I don't
Hmm.
know if you're aware of GitHub Copilot. Have you heard about it?
I've heard of GitHub. I've not heard
So
of Copilot. Let me pull that up.
So Copilot is an AI that GitHub is providing as a service that you can plug into your code editor, and basically it suggests you pieces of code based on what you're typing. So it's kind of
Whoa.
like having a second brain, and it's amazing. However, there's a bit of controversy right now because it's making use of supposedly open source code that it's been trained with. However, there's some people that have found that it's actually using snippets of code of private repositories. So there's a bit of a gray area in there.
Mhm.
However, you just asked about the copying code around. That's almost what the AI helps you do. It suggests you the code, and all you have to do is say, "Yep, that looks good." Enter. There, off it goes.
Well, that's actually pretty neat. So, if somebody were to start, would you recommend them to use that, or would you rather them try to figure out on their own first in order to get their feet wet?
They probably need to figure it out on their own first, because when something suggests you a piece of code, you also have to look at it and understand it and make sure that
Hmm.
it's doing what you think it should be doing. So you need to know the basics to make good use of this kind of technology.
Okay, because it's not essentially like cutting corners. It's more so like quickening the pace of it. So if you don't
Yeah.
really know what it is that you're doing, then it's just like a complete rookie and driving going 80 miles an hour, not knowing how to brake or how to turn, and it's completely not recommended for beginners. At least at like an intermediate, maybe.
Yeah, think of it like your GPS on your car, right? You need to
Hmm.
know how to drive, but then the GPS tells you kind of the shortcuts where to go, right?
Hey, nice, nice. I like that. One question that I did have for a software developer such as yourself is, how do you not get bored coding, or how do you not give up when the lines of code that you create don't align with what you're trying to do?
Um, so I think you need to have a special kind of uh, personality, I would say, to enjoy programming. It's not anything like super specific. All
Hmm.
you have to do is you need to be patient and you need to know how to persevere. Um, because a lot of like I've spent some time. So I've been doing this for like 10 years, and I am not ashamed to say that I sometimes spend like half a day going through something and turns out that I just put a typo somewhere or I just called the wrong variable somewhere. And it just happens because sometimes you're tired
Yeah,
and you know you're not paying too much attention to what you're doing and that happens. So you mentioned how do I not get tired coding? Um, you get tired. You only get tired if you get interrupted while programming.
interesting.
And there's loads of studies on the subject, and it is true. When you have when you're programming, it takes you like around 15 minutes to get into something that we call the flow.
Hmm. Hmm.
And this is going to sound like very metaphysical or
No,
whatever,
go
but
for it. Go for it.
it's a state where it's like you and your code are like one, let's say. um,
Interesting.
it's you get into a state where you're almost not even thinking. You're just writing it out. You're in that flow. You know exactly uh, what you want to do and how you're going to do it, and it just comes out naturally. And I will say that if any of you have ever had that feeling of being um, of being in the flow, it's it's something magical, I would say, and it's something that everyone should experience with whatever they do, because it's actually very relaxing because you're not having to tire yourself out. The rest of the world doesn't even exist, and
Hmm.
I'm talking about this like it's some very special thing or some metaphysical experience. It's not. It's just you're being mindful of what you're doing. But and while you're in that state, when somebody comes in and interrupts you, it shatters that concentration and it
Hmm.
shatters that flow. And you have to spend a few seconds getting out of it to understand what is this person next to me asking me about.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then the worst part is now you're interrupted. Now you have to spend another 15 minutes getting into that flow, and that's the actual tiring bit. So if you're a software developer, try to make sure that you have at least like 4 hour blocks where nobody is going to interrupt you, so that you can get into that flow and stay in that flow for a long time, and you'll find that actually lets you feel less tired.
Now, in regards to being in present in that moment, do you feel that there's more enjoyment of you creating the code in that present moment versus the completed and finished product?
Hmm. I there's a special okay, I'm going to relate this to playing a game because
Hmm.
that's what we're doing, right? um when you're playing a game, you also get into this special flow, right?
Hmm.
Like when you're having like a really good game of like League of Legends or Dota or whatever, and you're just doing the right things because you're not thinking, you're just doing everything based on instinct. You're
Hmm.
in that flow, and everything you enjoy the moment, but then you get a kick when the game ends and when you win the game, right?
Hmm.
It's like an endorphin release in yourself, but you enjoy the process too. It's exactly the same. So you enjoy the process, and obviously it's not a half an hour game like in League of Legends. It's like 2 months or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, but you enjoy the process, But then when you finally release whatever it is that you're making,
Hmm.
there's a sense of relief, and there's this endorphin kick of I've finished something and it's out there.
Now, in your case, which part of the journey do you prefer?
I'm gonna speak for myself, and I'm probably able to speak for every programmer out there. We enjoy the process, and maybe people will get annoyed at me saying this, but the reason why is because if you're a programmer, think about how many unfinished products you have and compare that to the actual finished products that you have. You will find very likely that you've got loads of unfinished stuff and maybe a couple of finished bits, right? So because of that, I think we enjoy the process a lot more than we do the 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 finished, um, launching something. However, because it's so rare that we launch something, when we do, we get loads of like satisfaction from it. It's like an endorphin um, boost in your system, I would say.
And do you prefer a more complicated project or something a little bit more seamless, something a little bit easier? Do you like the challenge?
I love a challenge, especially because uh, part of the challenge, or a very complex architecture or a very complex project, is how do I make this simple, and
Ooh.
how do I get the simplest, most, the smallest bit of functionality that I can deliver and start playing with something. um, it's called the MVP, minimum viable product. So
Mhm,
how do we
mhm.
get this smallest thing? And I like to go even a stage earlier. If I can get something that is held together by spit and duct tape, brilliant. Let's get something out there so we can start talking about it and start iterating upon it.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Man, making me think back, man, I should have been a programmer.
Well,
Uh,
there's always time.
hold on now, hold on now. I like conversating with people. Hold on now, but it's actually pretty cool because it doesn't sound like it's too far fetched, and I can totally understand getting into the flow. Because back in college, I had to do the Ubuntu line of coding, and man, I didn't even do Windows line of coding. So skip Python and JavaScript and just put me right into Linux programming. And I was just like, man, this is a completely, totally different language. And so I wanted to know, when you're coding and you mentioned that, some programmers have unfinished products, what would you say is your favorite unfinished product
Hmm.
or
Uh,
project?
I have two. One of them is something like that I keep on the side, and I've been doing it for like 5 years. And every maybe there's a week in each year that I'm gonna go in and do something with it. And it's a tool to basically gather telemetry data of interactions in websites.
Mm.
I'm very passionate about usability and
Mhm.
user experience, so that kind of spawned from that. The other one is a game, and like I said, I always get distracted making
Yeah,
tools
yeah,
instead of making games.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so I like management style games, and I started making a game with it's kind of like, do you remember like SimCity and City
Yes,
Skylines, right?
yeah, love
It's kind of
those.
like that. However, you're not dealing with humans; you're dealing with like undead and demons and whatnot. So how would a society
Mhm.
with like fictional species would work? And like
Mm.
the reason why I thought of this is because I had a dream that I was playing this game, and I was playing with the undead, and I had to, like, undead, they can't reproduce, right? So how do you grow your population? You have to import corpses from nearby cities and then have somebody that raises them or whatever. So that was the base. So I started doing that, and
Wow.
then I got lost in creating a tool to generate races so that you can easily mod them. And it's been a bit to the side because I got
Sounds like an
distracted by the
amazing
tool.
game. Oh my
I know,
gosh.
right? But
Wait, what
it
was the
takes
tool that distracted you?
I was making a tool to generate the races, so that you could easily
Oh.
create ad hoc races. Like this race needs behaves like this. It
Hmm.
needs
Hmm.
I don't know, to instead of like being a pair of people to produce an offspring, they need, I don't know, three people to produce an offspring, for
Hmm.
example, or they are made of rock and now they just need to cut themselves in half and suddenly two people come up or whatever. So I started making a tool that would generate the configuration for particular races and make it very easy. So like I said, I like getting distracted with tools.
Man, that's actually pretty epic. Like, man, a programmer has a failure that could be almost better than somebody else's finished product. That was great. If anybody that sees this and you guys want to collaborate with Tiago Dosaki, reach out to him because you heard those two amazing programs. That is pretty epic. Now, I do want to touch base on a little bit because I was looking at your website and I did see that you are also a mentor to some kids and you also teach them programming. And I wanted to know what got you into wanting to be a mentor and wanting to teach young children how to program.
Yeah, I I believe that at some point we should not have any programmers, because I think one of the a good programmer is trying to get rid of its own job, and I think at some point we should stop having programmers at all for two reasons. One of them, there's a lot of no code sort of movements
Hmm.
nowadays where to help other people that are not very technical into creating things.
Hmm.
But also, I believe that programming and technical skills, there should be normal things in everybody's life. Like we all learn English, like we all learn mathematics, etc.,
Hmm.
etc. Everybody should learn a little bit of programming so that they can start creating the basis of whatever it is that their job is going to need.
Hmm.
So you're not a programmer in finance, you're a economist or whatever, and you
Hmm.
happen to also create your programs.
Hmm.
And with that in mind, I thought I would like to be part of improving the literacy in programming languages and in programming thinking. So I remember I was walking in my town and I passed by the library and
Hmm.
there was an ad about we need mentors for some coding lessons. I'm like, huh, why not? I got my Saturdays free. I don't need to do anything. I'll do this. So I started doing that, and then I evolved into um, having a more not a structured classes. I would say more bring your own projects, and we'll help you with them, and we'll help you develop them. So I've got now we run it every other Sunday in a nearby area, and people bring their own projects, usually like teenagers, and they all usually bring games, and we help them with like code advice or have you thought about the problem this way, how to structure their problems, how to decompose their challenges, etc., etc. There's one guy in my sessions, and he's like, when I was your age, I could not be, I could not do this. Like, you're a genius. Like, he's made his own game engine, like from scratch, you know.
Dang.
Is now working on a decompiler to do whatever, because he does um security hacks for fun, as in there's challenges that companies put out there to, like, let's we've got this product, let's get you hacking it to so that we discover vulnerabilities, and he
Hmm.
participates in those challenges, and the guy is like 14, and
Yeesh.
he's like, well, if to do this properly, it would be nice if we have a tool to decompile all these executables in a particular way, because all the ones out there don't do what I want. So he's made his own, and I'm like, wow, this guy is like proper smart.
Wow. Wow, you're ushering in a new generation. It's like you're literally like scouting out the future talent for either your own company, for your own project, or for somebody else, because if they didn't have somebody that would let them know, that they have that talent, and that's even crazy to think that they're some of them are coming in not knowing anything, and others are coming in with already some advanced information, and they just need
Yeah.
tweaks here and there that you might not even be on their coding level, but since you already have a massive amount of information, you can at least give them that guidance. So that's actually pretty cool that not only was that a random occurrence to mentor, but the fact that you're discovering this in those individuals and being able to help them is that's super impressive.
Yeah, yeah, and it's very satisfying too, because you get to see people when they come in, and sometimes, like you said, they don't know anything, and then maybe after a year or something, they're creating like really amazing things on their own and being very autonomous. So it's very rewarding to see people grow.
That's actually super cool. Now, if you could give them uh some further motivation, because it sounds like they are those kids, they already know what they want or that they need that kind of uh advice or they need that kind of skill set. If you could motivate other kids, whether it's being in the same age group, would you use what you mentioned about this is a skill set that is imperative for the future as like a calling card, like, hey, listen, this is something that needs to be taught in schools? Or would you use something like, hey, listen, this kid over here, do you see what he's doing? Like, he's doing this and he's only 14. Like, would you try to motivate more individuals to try to learn that coding? And individuals being the younger generation, because older generation might think it's a little bit too complicated.
Actually, let me just pick on this the older generation. We are seeing a lot of retrainers or career
Ooh.
changers, and
Mhm.
so, for example, I spoke with somebody like the other day, and they're 52, and they're just getting into programming now.
What?
Yeah, exactly. So I do, like I mentioned earlier, I do a podcast on people that change careers, and
Mhm.
it's never really too late to change. And we get to, it's funny to understand people's journeys and to get where they were. But back to your first question about how to motivate people, I don't think I would motivate them to get into this using either of those examples,
Mhm.
because you might, so for example, if you say, oh, there's this 14-year-old and he's doing all of this stuff, you might feel a little bit
Intimidated.
intimidated. Yeah, it's like, oh, I'll never be that, so you might as well not start. But another point. First of all, I think it is a skill that everybody should have, yes,
Mhm.
but then think about the autonomy that you have um, when you find a problem and you can solve it yourself. So
Mm.
think about the challenge that you have every day,
Mhm.
and for sure that challenge can probably be solved if you know a little bit about software development or robotics. If it's like a real world problem, there is always a way to resolve something by decomposing the problem, understanding how can you automate something. um, so I would angle it in from that perspective.
Interesting. That's actually pretty cool, the way that you can go from having a career of 52 and just switch over, as well as using those motivations in order to try to get somebody to focus on programming. And that's so intriguing. Like, of course, we have to have a software developer come on board and let us know about that. And in regards to uh, what do you think would be the most important skill in order to be a proficient developer or a programmer?
um, Curiosity, probably. I would say that is the, because a lot of things spawn out of that.
Hmm.
So if you're curious, when you see an issue, you will probably try to understand what that is. If you see a problem, you'll try to understand what is the source of that problem,
Hmm.
because software development isn't about programming. It's not. It's about problem solving. It's about looking at something, understanding what makes it tick,
Hmm.
and see how can you decompose this and resolve this issue. There's a very good book called How to Solve It by George Polya. He's like a Polish mathematician, and the whole book is mathematical proofs and whatnot, but don't let that uh, scare you, because the lessons that are written in plain English are applied to all your life, including problem solving in software development, but also including problem solving in your daily lives.
That's actually that's actually pretty cool. A lot of people say that curiosity killed the cat, but it might be the essential factor that enables you to be a very good programmer. Like,
Yeah,
wow.
just on that bit, curiosity killed the cat. Yes, but when you're creating a program, unless you're working like in health tech or whatever, you're not going to kill anybody. You might lose some time. You might lose a bit of money. Who cares? What's the worst
Mhm.
that can happen? And one of the essential things that is hard is very hard for people to understand and to get in their minds is it's okay to fail. Do
Yes.
something, it doesn't work, it's okay. Nothing happens. You can always try again. You can always, but and always by failing, it tells you what's gone wrong, and then you can have a bit of a dig around, understand what went wrong and how you can solve it.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Hmm. That's actually pretty cool because a lot of people won't try because they'll be so afraid of failing. They'll be so scared that, the worst that could happen is more so than, losing time, but they'll be labeled as a failure, like, oh, your code didn't work, you're trash, this and that. So that's actually a pretty interesting take on just trying.
Yeah, and this is applied to everything. So I listen to a board game podcast, board game development podcast, and they one of like something that the host always asks to his guests is how many unfinished and how many failed games have you got, uh, versus how many have you released. And people have released, like, I don't know, let's say 10 games,
Hmm.
and they have thousands and thousands of failed games. So failure makes you better. Failure gives you the lessons so that you can succeed later. So don't be afraid to fail.
Oh man, that's so intriguing, and that also makes me want to know, if you had to write a book tomorrow, what would you mainly be writing that book about?
Huh. A book tomorrow. Um, I'll probably I would probably do something. If okay, there's very good books out there, and I would probably never write a book as good as any of the books out there. But
Hey,
I
don't
would
get
like.
intimidated. We just said don't get intimidated by the good people. Hold on now.
True. But there's the one subject that I think we need more information about, or we need more widespread information about, is problem solving and failure.
Mm,
And I
mm.
think if you have something that marries the two up, um, that would be great. But like I said, that book, How to Solve It, is really really good. Um, but maybe there would be a niche in having more approachable, maybe, book. I'll have to think about that.
Oh no, that makes me want to ask these two important questions then. What is your favorite or your most satisfying problem that you were able to resolve professionally, personally, in a game? The one that you got the most satisfaction after resolving it.
Hmm. I'm going to go back to my teens, when I was working with a group of friends, to make a game at the time,
Mhm.
and I was only a 3D artist then. And one of my issues was, I had to create, because of the architecture style of the place that we were making.
Mhm.
I had to create a lot of spiral things,
Mhm.
like spiral stairs, spiral towers, etc., etc. And that was a pain to do manually.
Mhm.
And I got a real kick out of this when I found out that I could use Python to script my way into
Yeah.
creating the spiral structures.
Mhm.
So I really, really got a kick out of that one.
Hey, that's lit. All right, so I'm gonna see that in your book. All right, next question. What is the failure that you have learned or you have taken the most out of? So the failure that you pulled out so much, whether it's motivation, whether it's I'm never gonna do this again, or whether it's wow, I know how to do it a little bit better. Again, personal, professional, or in a game.
In my first job, I had I deleted a whole production database. And if for people who are listening who have no idea what the impact of this is, imagine if you're on, I don't know, let's say TikTok or whatever, or Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and everybody's accounts, everybody's pictures, everybody's videos is now gone just because
Yeesh.
one guy got in there and deleted everything. Um, so that made me, and I was like a junior guy at the time, like, oh my god, this is disaster.
And you're still
But
here. You're still
and I'm
here.
still here. I'm still here. And it's and we just go back to failing is okay.
Yeah.
Failing is okay.
Yeah.
So we lost a bunch of data from a bunch of our customers, and I was like, maybe it's not so bad because we've got backups. So as I was restoring the backups, I found out our backups are not actually backups. Who Because we didn't even uh, we had a process in there, but maybe nobody tests the backups. So that was like the first big test. And so production database deleted, no backups. We had no current backups because we actually had backups from a week ago.
Hmm.
Um, and the automated process was not working correctly, so we found a number of problems. So by failing, you actually expose issues that you may have, and that was one of the important things for me to take. Took two important things. First of all, make sure you're doing the thing where you think you're doing it.
Hmm.
And so that, because I thought I was doing this in one environment, and turns out I was doing it in another. So double check everything. The second point is your fallbacks and your mitigations. You need to test them all the time. You need to test them all the time and run simulations. Um, and I'm going to play this back into the gaming world, where myself and a few friends, we at the time we played some League of Legends. And one of the things that it's easy is when everything is going okay, you win, right? And that's fine. But
Hmm.
when some things are going wrong, or that's harder to come back, or to get a win out of,
Hmm.
because you don't prepare for that often. I
Hmm.
suppose like pro players, they probably do. But what we sometimes did was, let's start the game and get into this situation where we are not doing very well on purpose and very early, because then we can either lose fast, and then we learn something from it,
Hmm.
or we can figure out how we come back on top. So test your mitigations, and test your failure scenarios, really.
Man, that's actually pretty interesting. You were able to. That's the comeback of a lifetime. Wow. Woo, deleting all that. Wow, that's almost impressive. To be able to do that and still come out on top. Wow, that's super cool.
I think you need to be a bit lucky with the environment that you start working in, or that you are working in. And I think because we are lucky in the software development world, where there's like, you trip over jobs all the time, it's not a problem. So if you find an environment that doesn't ring with you, and it doesn't really it doesn't let you learn, doesn't let you expand yourself, then just change, just go somewhere else, because you need to have a safe environment to fail and to learn.
Okay, perfect. And now the last question that I want to ask you is if you could go back in time and have a 5-minute conversation with your 18-year-old self, what would you either talk about or would you ask questions in order to nudge yourself in the right direction? How would that play out? 18-year-old you.
Okay, so part of me thinks I wouldn't want to interfere with anything because I have a pretty good life and I wouldn't want to change anything. However, if, like I said, I'm a very curious person,
Hmm.
so I would be like, I wonder what would happen if this happened. So
Mm.
sorry. So maybe I would ask him, um, if let's give up on games. Don't try to think about that. Focus on focus on like normal programming, just to see where I would end up. Also, I probably tell him to not to probably save the Bitcoin wallet that I had. So I've got a Bitcoin wallet that I can't access anymore because it's corrupted. And I had 1 Bitcoin on it. So I've lost, I don't know. Was it like, I think it's £20,000 or whatever, 1 Bitcoin or something.
Yeah, something around
So
that.
yeah, I'll probably tell him like, don't lose that. Don't lose that.
Oh no, that's actually pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting. Well, thank you so much, Tiago Dosaki, for coming on, giving us a lot of value in regards to programming, in regards to being a leader, in regards to being a mentor, all the information that you've distilled upon us. I hope that every listener has used it to the best of their ability. And as individuals that program, if you want to help out, reach out to him. You heard his 2 projects that are yet to be finished. Maybe he just needs a little bit motivation from individuals who would be interested in partaking on that. Once again, let them know where they can follow you. I did leave it in the description, but sometimes it's good to let them know.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that I'm probably most active on Twitter. So if you go on Twitter and search for Dosaki, you'll find me. And don't be uh, don't be a stranger. If I can help you with anything, if you just want have some questions, just message me, and I'm fairly open person, and I like helping. So please do reach out.
Well, guys, you heard it from here. Thank you once again for joining, and thank you for everybody that tuned in. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Other than that, I wish you have a fun and rest productive day. Take care and have a great rest.